Hello everyone, in this video I'll be smoking some ribeyes for dinner, and so you can see here I have some boneless USDA choice ribeye, about 4.5 pounds, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out and tie them up first. Now in the United States there's actually 8 beef quality grades. There's prime, choice, select, standard, commercial, cutter, and canner. The first 3 are the ones that you usually see in grocery stores. The last 5 are ones that are usually saved for beef stock or pet food, that sort of thing. And on the ribeye, here you can see me pointing to two different muscles. The outside portion that I just pointed to there is called the spinalis dorsi, and the inside is called the longissimus dorsi. Now this is the reason why I'm tying it up. I've cooked ribeye before, but I found that after cooking it, they actually these two muscles separated, and this just helps keep everything together. So when I'm cooking it, it doesn't necessarily fall apart. So I'm just going ahead and tying it around the outside of each, just to keep them together. And I'm tying this really tight because when meat cooks, it shrinks. So I want to make sure that it's really tight so when it shrinks, it still remains tight. So here you can see I had a little trouble with that first steak, so I'm just going to go ahead and reposition it. And I'm just tying a double overhand knot, nothing fancy. Wrap it around, tight as possible, tight. Make sure the string's centered, onto the next one. So same thing, string is centered, tighten it as much as possible, double overhand knot. Nothing complicated. Here on to the last one, you can see how the meat kind of separates already even before being cooked, and that's why it's just important to tie this together so cooking process is a lot easier. And yep, double overhand knot, tie it, center the string, and you can see all this extra string that I'm going to go ahead and cut with a knife. You can use a pair of scissors, that's probably safer, but yep, now it's ready for seasoning. So I went ahead and I lined up the steaks, and I'm salting them very heavily. You can see how much salt I'm doing there visually, and I'm not really worried about this being too salty just because of how thick these steaks are, and I'm not really letting it rest for a long time. I'm really seasoning these right before I'm cooking it, so it doesn't really have a lot of time to really penetrate that deep. And then I'm just going in with black pepper and just doing that really heavily as well and patting it in. I don't rub in my seasonings usually just because it kind of makes things awkward. You just kind of end up pushing it around and it ends up getting wet and clumping up in different areas, and you don't really get an even coating. So I'm just going ahead, salting each side, peppering each side, and you can go ahead and put garlic powder, onion powder, any sort of seasonings you want on the outside here, whatever you like. I personally like to keep it simple with salt and pepper, but every once in a while I'll feel kind of, a little, I guess frisky. Probably not the best word. Yeah, that's gross. Anyway, I'm just going ahead and I'm seasoning the sides, salt and pepper as well. And you can kind of roll it around, make sure you get those bits on the little pan there, but I'm not doing that too much, and I'm just making sure everything's covered as good as possible. All right. Seasoning the fat side, and it's ready for the grill. So the temperature I'll be smoking today is at around 225, and I just set it up the same way I did for my pulled pork. 1 chunk of apple and 1 chunk of hickory on each wing of the charcoal beds. And I'm just going ahead, placing them on the grill, making sure they're spaced evenly, and just covering it with the lid. I actually let this go for 1 hour, and after an hour, I went ahead and I rotated the grate, just so I made sure all the pieces were like cooking evenly. And I'm actually thankful I did this because one of the wings of charcoal actually went out and I didn't realize it. So I think this really helps me end up with like an even cook at the end. So I'm just going ahead flipping them, and they're staying together thankfully because of the string that I tied. And right now I'm just trying to find the center of the steak with the thermometer probe, just so I can kind of monitor how the cook's going without having to open the lid. So yep, just poking it, trying to find the area where it's not the hottest. Well, actually, I should just say I'm trying to find the area that's coldest. That's exactly what I'm doing. And that way I kind of know I'm in the center of the steak, and by the time it's cooked, that the whole steak is even. And just covering that with the lid and waiting until it's cooked. So you can see on the bottom probe there, I'm not sure if you could catch that because it was really fast, but the temperature of the steak's at 120, which is actually rare. And the internal temperature for rare steaks is actually around 120 to 130. Anything within that range is considered rare. Medium rare is 130 to 135. And I'm just going ahead and checking this with my thermopen, just double checking, making sure the temperature in the probe that I left in there is consistent. And it is, so I'm going to go ahead and actually pull these steaks. And I'm just going to place them on a wire rack. Now, I forgot to mention that the method I'm using to cook these steaks is actually called the reverse sear, and basically you just cook them first and then sear them afterwards. And here I'm patting the surface dry, but you can see the color of it's not very appealing. It's just kind of gray, and I'm just patting it dry so it sears up nice and crisp. And we're back at the grill, and we're going ahead. Well, actually, not we. I am. I'm gathering the coals all at the center, and I'm gonna be searing these steaks 1 minute each side, and I'm just gonna do 1 minute each side, pull the steak off, and then work on the next one. And I'm actually gonna repeat this process until I get a color that I'm happy with. And the goal here isn't to cook the insides; it's just to get color on the outside. You can do this on the grill. You can do it on a cast iron pan. You can cook it slow in the oven. There's lots of different ways to reverse sear. The main part is you just cook it slow in any method you want, and then afterwards, once the inside's cooked, you sear the outside for color. And yeah, I'm gonna go cut to the next step. I did this about 3 or 4 times, and for each steak, and you can see the color change when we jump there. So it's a little darker here. I'm not entirely happy with how dark it got. I think I might just do it on cast iron next time. But yep, basically you get the concept. The goal is to get a darker color, and yeah, we'll cut to the inside of me cutting it. So now that we're inside, you can see the color is much better than before, and I'm just going ahead and cutting the string and separating those 2 muscles and just cutting them up separately because the grain runs a bit differently for them. And whenever you cut meat, you want to make sure that you cut against the grain. That way it's less chewy. And I actually have some trouble figuring out where the grain ran in here. I need to practice with cutting meat more. I will admit that, but I'm just going ahead, cutting against the grain, second guessing myself, not sure if I am cutting against the grain, and just doing it. And you can see the inside's a beautiful rare. I think next time I'll cook it a little bit more medium rare for my family, but each of these steaks I'm just doing the same thing. Removing that string, separating the 2 muscles from each other, and just cutting them separately. And the beauty of using this reverse sear method is that the inside, you can see how perfect it is wall to wall. You don't really have any variations, no gray band inside, and it's just really beautiful. And yep, I'm just slicing it up for dinner. This ended up being a lot more than we needed, but yeah, I am probably gonna aim for half a pound per person next time. And cooking steaks like this is really easy. There's no real I like it when you do it this way, because if you have a really expensive steak, it's really hard to mess up. You kind of get a perfect cook each time, and it works especially well with these thick steaks. With thinner steaks, it's probably not really worth your time to cook it slow like this because it takes a couple hours. But yeah, just look at that, beautiful. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually plate this up, and then I'll cut to a picture of me when it's all done and plated, and I'll just end the video off there. Thanks for watching, everyone.